What is going on, YouTube? This is The Last Musketeer, and welcome back to part 3 of the Arknights free-to-play progression series. So, after about 2 months into the game, I have finally got it. I finally received the top operator tag. Now, I have got robots, which everybody says is pretty rare, like 4 times already, which is kind of sad to see, but at the same time, I actually did skip them, so I do apologize for people that are into the collecting sake of that. I'll have to go back and get them, at some point here. But getting the top operator one, I was very excited, and especially because I don't have a good way to deal with a boss. And so I saw the nuking tag, and I assumed that more than likely I'd go for that, but I didn't know the best option. So I went ahead and screen capped it and sent it into Discord, and when it did, they weighed out the options. They said, actually, if I went for the top operator, melee, and healing tags, more than likely that's going to be a better bet for my account, because Saria is the guarantee from these 3 tags. So I had to also make sure that I didn't forget to turn it to 9 hours, because if I did not, then the tags can fall off, evidently. So I just gotta make sure that I did everything right. So as you see here, it's taking a little bit of time because I was actually freaking out so much. It's a good feeling when you finally get something like that. But we go ahead and throw it in. I expedited, of course, because I want it to come out as soon as possible. So welcome to the family, Saria. It's been a good week for Arknights. Getting Saria has actually made a big upgrade to my account, though I haven't got her that far yet, because I am trying to work up Bagpipe momentarily. So moving on from that, we unlocked another side event, Gabriel the Great Chief returns, because, well, Gabriel the Immortal is actually my 3rd favorite character, I think, in the game so far. Of course, the list goes Swire. Everybody that knows me knows Swire is my favorite by far, then Mudrock, and then Gabriel. Both versions of her, but the Invincible one is one of my favorites. So, I wanted to throw in a couple of stages from this. No, actually just one. I'm going to throw in this stage particularly because I do really like the way they have the middle lane set up. You've got blocker on both sides of the gate right in front, and then most of the paths are unblockable. So the way you do it is with this whole side event that you have these crocs that chop down the mushrooms so that you can plant somebody on there. So you do that to clear up some space, and then you can actually fire these. The reason I like this map so much is the way these slugs move in through the map is actually so enjoyable to watch. That being said, they were a little scary. I thought I was actually going to potentially leak something on here, because a lot of times when it's an early stage, I have a pretty decent lineup for taking out most things, so I figured, I could probably just do it without doing a practice run first. Obviously not the best idea, but I do make that decision sometimes just because I like to try to test myself with that. But we did get it down. Luckily, they do loop a lot near the end, so I was able to do that. And then I got the record restoration for Tomimi, so now I have a new caster, one that I don't necessarily know that I'm going to work out for a while, but it's always good to add a new hero to the squad. And gotta say, that character is drawn extremely thick there, but anyway, I just wanted to show this one off real quick. And I did do some more stages on it, but I didn't necessarily want to show them because it's not the most exciting thing to watch. I know in these progression videos I go pretty far into a lot of things, but I don't want to show all the content because it just drags out the video even more. But I did actually get the level 50 resource pack. I've got it for 28 OP, which is quite expensive, but the stuff that you get out of it is extremely good, so I find it incredibly worth as a free-to-play every time. And also the free packs that come along with them as you're leveling up, like every 5 levels, is actually so nice as well. I'm glad they do that. Now this one is part of the To Be Continued event. Now I don't show a lot of these. I show some of the challenge runs, but I do not show a lot of the regular clears in this one because I actually forgot to record TC8. The reason being, I had been recording it first while I was doing some of the practice runs, and then I turned it off. For some reason, I don't exactly remember why at this point, but I did turn it off, and so you're not going to be able to see any of that, which is unfortunate. I do apologize on that aspect, because TC8 was actually a little difficult for me. I didn't have the best lineup for it. It's always a good idea to get some type of heavy damage dealing unit, which I do not personally have in my own squad, at least not built. So it's kind of hard for me to do these solo without borrowing something. So I did end up borrowing for it. I think I borrowed Golden Glow to make sure that I got the casters down and to slow down a lot of the ones that are running through to make it a little easier to clear in that aspect. It was a bit of a scuffed run too. It was kind of funny to watch, but we got through it, got the 3-star. And I'll show some more of the actual challenge runs a little bit later in this video, but the main problem with this one that I had was the fact that even though Thorns does really good damage and Mudrock also does good damage, I have to guarantee that I have a 3-blocker for these brawlers at all times, whatever you want to call it. I forget what they're exactly called, but they have to be blocked by someone with 3 block. So if they run through, they're going to run straight past Thorns into the gate and you lose. That's where a lot of my problems came in. If I had had a little bit stronger damage dealers when it comes to like Click, if Click was higher level, maybe E2 something, same with Blue Poison, it probably would have been a little bit easier. And that's something I'm working towards. Like I've got so many that I actually want to work up, so many that are more beneficial I think to my squad in general. So Bagpipe being the main one, because Bagpipe is going to be a huge improvement, especially because Myrtle and Bagpipe together are insane. It's like instant DP generation, makes you get everything out so much faster. But on this one, I do like this one. This is the challenge run of TC2. I always like this map. I love the style of it, and I was trying to decide exactly how I wanted to do this. So you'll see me pause here, because I'm thinking about if I throw Exu down at the top and the thing walks through the same time that she does it, or she takes them out really early in an awkward spot and then those things kind of just walk down straight away, is that necessarily the best idea? But I decided to go for it. Just put it up in the top lane. I've also got Cantabile up there doing some extra damage because she doesn't have enough block for that thing to attack her. It has to have a certain amount of block. I think it's 2 for that thing to actually go for her. So she can sit there and do a little bit extra damage, and then I'll throw Exu up there a little bit later. And granted, I did take a little bit too much time, I think, planning that. But, you know, at least in the end, we do get the win. So that's the most important aspect. But I have Click doing a little bit extra topside damage. If you've seen these videos, I absolutely love Click. Click, I think, is a fantastic option for damage. And you'll see here, I drops Exu, but I drop her so late that it's just the worst decision making of all time. Luckily, the scuff gameplay still goes through. So when I do unpause here, after contemplating, I do drop her down. And when you know it, they go through actually relatively quickly, so I don't get a whole lot of shots on them through her, but I get enough, especially with the Mystima freeze that she does there, or, well, it's technically a stun, but she freezes them in place. I'm able to clear them out in time, throw Beagle in there for a couple extra shots to finish it off. Now TC3, all it really did was move the drone location spot from the top right corner over to the top left, and really didn't make that much of a difference. I mean, realistically, I guess it comes to you a little faster, which is, I guess, in a way, harder to take it out before it gets there, but it really wasn't a problem. Those drones in this one don't have that high of stats. Actually pretty easy to deal with. But as you see here, Thorns is once again holding the lane like he always does. He's absolutely nuts. I use him too much, I admit it. I always say that, you know, I'm going to try to not use him as much, and then I go ahead and do it anyway because, you know, why not? He's just one of those operators that's just so insanely good that if you do grab him, you might as well use him. Now, Golden Glow is actually one that I borrowed. The reason being, I try to borrow on challenge stages because I don't necessarily have to worry all that much about farming them, because you're not going to farm a challenge stage, so you might as well use somebody's support unit. So here actually is when I work up Saria a little bit, so I had to actually farm a little bit of the defender tokens. I didn't realize I didn't have enough of the chips, so I went ahead, farmed like 3 or 4 stages, kept getting unlucky. I only needed like 1 or 2, and I kept pulling the other, I think it's the medic card on that one, but finally get her up, and I have enough to take her up decently high. But the problem with that is I would be using all my LMD, and that LMD is of course going to Bagpipe. So we get her up to level 5. I do believe I actually max out her level a little bit later. I might not have finished that yet. I know I got to 6 at some point. Might not have got to 7 because I think I'm lacking a little bit in the skill book department. There is a lot of things that I actually have to work on that is taking most of that time. So bear with me on that. But we're getting basically a fourth of the way there to E2ing Bagpipe, which is, I guess, an improvement as some time. And I'm noticing more and more often that my LMD is going up fairly quickly at this point. I'm not really having that hard a time saving them, but I do go ahead and actually fully level Bagpipe because I realized I was at 6 there. So whenever I get her to that point, her skill 3 is going to be so nice for actually doing some heavy damage. So I'm excited about that. But here is another challenge stage, and I also always love this style of map. The first time I actually really got to play it was during the CC when it was doing the daily rotation, and I have to say that while it is a little scary, a little overwhelming at times, it seems, it's really not that bad. If you're placing correctly, being a little smart with the way you're doing the placements, it's not so bad. You have to make sure that nobody's facing away from the dark. You have to make sure that somebody is at least revealing that location, or when those big guys come out, they're going to do a lot of heavy damage to your operator, so you have to be careful on that. Now, I did borrow someone's Nyan because I wanted her to tank the actual elemental damage from these guys, because the shots are a lot faster, they hit harder, the build-up is quicker. So Honeyberry is doing enough to keep Nyan sustained at the moment that now both of them walk out, and it becomes a little bit scary at that point. But luckily the other one comes up from these stairs on the side, only gets 1 proc, nothing too bad. Mudrock takes him out from there. I used Beagle to actually trade some damage, so I didn't need to. It's always a good idea to at least get used to doing that for the future in case something happens. Now, this one, of course, is one of my least favorite maps because of the fact that you've got these snipers that stun on every, I think it's 3 hits, and then they'll just basically perma-stun you the whole time, and it is incredibly annoying to deal with. So you have to be extremely careful when it comes to this. And not only that, the unblockables that ran through with the extra movement speed was very hard to deal with. So I ended up using Mastima for that, and also Gabriel the Invincible to actually pull them in and make it to where they're slowed down and they can't really react during that time. So it was really good. Now, moving back on to the actual chapter clearing. So we're on 6:16. We're fighting Frost Nova. This is where I ended off in the last video, and if you remember, this was actually such a pain for me to deal with. So I ran it a lot of different ways, trying a lot of different strategies, and realized that I just didn't have quite enough damage. My initial thought was to go in and work up Meteor to actually get the defense down, and then my 2 snipers, Blue Poison and Cruz, would both basically take her out relatively quickly. I wouldn't really have that hard of a time. It's kind of RNG based at the same sense though, because if she takes off the wrong panels, she can knock off an important blocker that could cause the run to go downhill at that point. Now, as you saw, I dropped her with Posey the first phase, then I immediately pulled Posey out, and so I could drop Posey again on this part. Now, the unfortunate part is that when she came down, she blocked the first block lane that I was going to use to actually take her out with the crossbow before she got by, but I ended up using Click to finish her off. Click is a good option for that, because Click does some actual really good damage. Now, the main thing is the weebs with the swords here are actually a pain to deal with here, because I didn't have the greatest damage or the greatest ways to deal with them, and when they take out thorns, you know, it puts me in a really rough spot with my lineup. So I had to be careful, but having Posey back into the lineup, I can just throw her in, throw the typewriter down, and just do massive damage. So once Frost Nova was down, the rest of the map is actually just trivial, but it's really kind of RNG based, which I respect, but at the same time is very annoying. Let me know your experiences with it, how long it took you to actually do it. Maybe help me not feel so bad for failing so many times. I would very much appreciate that. But moving on to 6:17. So everybody warned me that 6:17 was going to be hard. That's what they said, I guess, to... obviously, people don't give me spoilers, but they didn't want me to know what was going on. And so, I wanted to talk about this, and I do apologize, I would play the regular music. I'm going to switch it up to a little sadder lo-fi when it comes to the moment of the cutscene, but for now, you're just going to have to deal with the upbeat, mellow atmosphere that you get from this lo-fi, and I do apologize on that. Like I said, I forgot to turn the sound on, and that is my bad on that. And when I did check to make sure that it did actually leave off, I also had some copyrighted music playing in the background that you heard through a stream I was listening to on Discord while playing. So I have to be really careful with what I do there. But this is Frost Nova's final stand. Amaya, Greythroat, and Blaze are all there to try to stop her from pushing past. They're trying to protect people as much as they can, and she's fighting, trying to fight her way through to get through the line for her own side, for her own sake. And honestly, you know, it kind of feels bad because, like, at first you don't want to like the other side, but as it goes on, you start to get more and more deeper connected to not just Rhode Islands, but the other side. The side you're supposed to be going against the whole time, because not everyone's bad, not everyone has the intent to do wrong. You know, both sides are fighting. Both sides are fighting for what they believe in, what they think is right, and whatever side you fall on, you know, you still gotta think of it in the sense that they're passionate for what they believe in. And man, it feels rough to go back and revisit while I was doing it, because this scene did make me fairly emotional, and I'm sure as I'm talking about it and going into the sadder sounding music, it's going to be a little bit harder to deal with. But I don't want to harp too much on it, because I'm going to do some story content in the future, and I want to talk more in depth when I get to that point. But hopefully, you know, I'm a fast reader. I probably should have slowed this down as I was doing it. But man, I've probably rewatched this clip, you know, 10 or so times, and it still gets me every time. So I'm going to do my best to get through this without getting emotional. I am a very emotional person though, so bear with me if you will. You know, I think this whole part is so beautifully written, because they blend so beautifully the ideals of the opposing side. Because while she may have been guilty of taking lives, especially innocent lives, she was doing what she thought was right for the good of her people. And while she may have been a little misjudging and put too much faith in someone that it didn't belong in which she was manipulated and used along with her fellow people to commit these wrongdoings, I think she still had it placed as a noble cause. So I don't take anything away from her. I sympathize with her. And that's why it makes it so hard to actually talk about this and read over it, because, well, I'm an extremely emotional person, and when it comes to anything with a sad aspect, especially when I get attached to them, it's hard to deal with. And just all she's ever felt for so long is just cold, and nearing the end of her life, finally getting to feel the warmth of another person. I'm just glad I was able to be along for that journey. And now, having her come over to Rhodes Island, even if it's just for mere moments, I like to think I speak for everyone when I say we're happy to have you. I'm happy to know that through us, she was able to feel that happiness, that peace again. Alright, so I know that wasn't the greatest take that I could actually do. You know, I had to cut quite often. Listen, I'm an extremely emotional person, and it's very hard for me to get through things like that, so do bear with me on that. When it comes to the story content, I'll be able to talk about everything and do things a little more in depth. It's gonna take me a little bit to get over that whole aspect. But moving on now to the final bit of the video, I'm doing some chapter 7, and I still have actually a decent amount to go over because I thought it was going to be a little bit harder than it actually was. There were some stages that were a bit annoying, yes, but as far as difficulty wise, really didn't have that many problems. I think I had only had to play things maybe once or twice. Through there I'd do a practice run and then go into a regular run. Because I didn't really know what I was going to be experiencing in this one. I knew there was going to be new enemies, or at least ones that I really hadn't experienced that much yet, so it's always better to be safe than sorry on these ones. And they're doing a lot more of blocking off certain paths in this one, it seems. They want to make it a little harder, make you expand your roster a little more to be able to take out situations like that, which I'm perfectly fine with. You know, over time I'm going to get better and better. And do a little bit more roster building going forward. So the main thing is now, as I'm getting further and further into 7.3, is kind of trying to use what I can to get Bagpipe up, because there's a lot of stages where it just ends up being a lot of rushing, where I'm having to get things out as fast as possible. So Bagpipe's going to be actually essential for doing that. Not necessary, but I will say that she's going to be the biggest help out of anything. Cantabile being in the lineup is actually huge as well, because throwing her down with the passive, with the extra attack speed off of deployment is actually huge for dealing with a lot of these things. She's also good for stalling as well, because she is a fast redeploy unit. So Cantabile just be one of those all around just great ones. I talk about it every single video. I know you're probably tired of hearing it. I can't talk that operator up enough. She's just insane. But I do like the aspect of following into what some of the earlier 6 stages were, because you're doing it where you're throwing down some blockers to take some of the damage and wait these guys out. Now, you can let them pass if you wanted to. The problem is, if they do get past, a lot of times you've got some of them coming out of the front gates there as well, which means whoever you have as your regular defender is going to take a lot of damage, and it's a bit unnecessary, so you have to be a little more careful how you do this. So I just had a few blockers that I had set forward to do, and for some reason the last one stopped. I don't know why. It just ticked himself out for some reason, so I'll take that. A little bit of a faster go through in that aspect. Now this one in particular annoyed me quite a lot, because it is just constant bum rush of enemies, and it wasn't all that hard to figure out necessarily. It was just extremely annoying. Like, they come at you so fast that half the time I didn't have enough time for deployment, and I could have used double blocking vanguards, yeah, to make it a little bit easier, but I still wanted to use the Myrtle Cantabile strat as I do most of the time. So I had Thorn's mid lane facing up, where when he gets his skill 2 going infinitely, he's going to be able to hit the ones in front of Saria, and Lapling can also deal a lot of damage when she starts to finally build up her skill 2. And so clearing it's really not that bad after that. Now, the one thing I did have to do, the thing that I realized I had to swap, was facing Gabriel up from the bottom, so that when I activated, it actually goes in there and deals damage to the ones in front of Thorns, because that's where most of the enemies came from, and dealing with that lane was the biggest issue. I ended up failing that lane multiple times until I figured out exactly how I wanted to do it. So it was good to finally get past that one. This was another one where they just try to send fast running units through the mid lane where you can't put any blockers, so you have to take them out before then, which is actually a scary thought. So I have Thorns on the right side to help take out that lane, and then I have Blue Poison as my sniper, just watching and trying to do damage as much as possible there. But the problem is, the underlying problem is making sure that I have enough damage through the side lanes to make sure that Blue Poison can focus on the ones in the middle, and also Thorns, because if Thorns doesn't get hits there, 100% they get by. But if Blue Poison gets all her hits. It's also a lot of damage, so it makes it a little easier for Thorns to clean up. So the fast-running dogs were a bit of a problem. I could have set up a little further up with Saria and made it to where he wasn't really focusing on them, on the dogs that run through as much, but it still worked out in the end. Either way you do it, a win is a win, so I will take that 100%. Now, Mudrock also could have soloed that lane, honestly, probably on the left side, but I threw Gavial there just for reassurance purposes. Probably should have faced her to the right. Would have been better that way. If something is almost getting through, I could have stopped him with her pull. But this is another one where they're just sending a lot of stuff at you in the mid lane, and between Thorns and Gavial, they took it out no problem. When it started to build up a decent amount of people, I would throw in Gavial's ulti, or her skill 2 rather, and it would pull all of them in and do enough damage to get them out before they could actually pass either of the 2 block guards. So, Cruz being on the bottom line, waiting to set up on the people that run out there, and I have Cantabile ready and queued for that as well to help take them out as fast as possible to lower the attack and defense of the enemy team. Once again, Cantabile great for that. Cruz also good for that. And top lane I didn't necessarily worry about because while they are all lining up here, it's really just a matter of Thorns doing a ton of damage and Gavial just cleaning up everything else and slowing them down enough that they can't actually get by in time. So top lane, I love Saria and Lapland up there, and then threw Cantabile at the end to do a little extra damage. Now 7-8 is actually the last one that I did, so I'm on 7-9 as it goes currently after this video, and 7-9 is looking a little scary. I think the way the map's set up, it looks a little strange. It might take me a little bit to figure out because there's like 5 or 6 different pathways to a blue goal, which is a very, very scary aspect. But once again, I have Thorns bottom taking that lane, basically soloing it, and Gavial there for the help if he needs it, which he does at times. And Gavial's also facing up once again so that if anything gets back, because it tends to stack up a little bit more in that lane while Lapland doesn't have her skill active, I can actually use Gavial to keep them in place and take them out. Because you'll see a lot of them running through, and that seems to be the main stipulation with these maps in particular. There's just a lot of people, a lot of enemies running through as fast as possible, just making it a little bit harder for you to finish it off, and especially with those guys getting them the defense buff. If you don't have enough damage, well, you're going to be in a rough spot. But as you can see here, that's what the map looks like. 1, 2, 3 on the right side, 1 on the left, 1 in the middle, where you can't place blockers. So, like I said, it's going to take me a little bit to figure out. I do love figuring out the hard strategies like that one, but it does take some time because I do not have the most upgraded roster right now. As you can see here, one of the things I was going to try to work on was getting either Mastery 3 on Myrtle for her skill 1 or doing Mastery 2 for Mudrock. So it's a bit of a time problem now. I'm having to be a little more careful with my resources because I am so low on books now. I'm needing a lot of rocks, so I guess I'm going to be hitting the quarry pretty soon. But as you can see, I'm just flashing through the roster real quick because nothing's really changed. Amaya's one that I am going to work up pretty soon, just to get it ready for the chapters that are coming up here. So anyway, that's going to do it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.